Sultan BARAKAT. He's a professor of public policy at Hamad bin Khalifa University. He's joining us from York in the UK. Sultan, thanks for your time. So talks, as we've just been mentioning there, have ended with the agreement to hold more talks in Egypt next week. The mediators have presented a so-called bridging proposal, consistent, they say, with the agreement laid out by the US at the end of May, backed by the UN. Can you explain, though, what's meant by this so-called bridging proposal? How it may differ, for instance, from what's come before?
Well, I think the main objective would be to keep the process ongoing. Often in such negotiations, the actual engagement in a process is as important, maybe, as the outcome eventually. And this bridging proposal will probably allow Hamas to engage directly in the negotiations. Now that Israel has assassinated the top political leader in Hamas and then his deputy, Sinwar has been appointed. Sinwar is based in Gaza. He clearly, under the current circumstances, and if Israel continues the same intensity of war, which they have maintained, and in fact, they probably escalated, it will be very difficult for Hamas to give and take in that kind of circumstances. So maybe part of the bridging would be a reduction in violence. This is very common in international peace talks. If you recall, when the United States negotiated with the Taliban, they agreed to continue fighting and talking at the same time, which seems to be the situation here between Israel and Hamas. But also implicitly, both sides gave in and reduced violence significantly to allow the talks to flow. Now, this is not what we're seeing from Israel at the moment, despite the fact that Hamas has not really had any major attack on Israel over the last few weeks. Israel has continued to intensify its attacks. It has stepped up in terms of number of operations. It continues to kill civilians randomly. And it operates as if it's not a state, as if it is made of two entities, one that is fighting the war and one that is talking about peace. Right. And there is no real command. And I think this what probably Biden would warn against. His and the Democrats' political future is at risk at this moment. We are left with 3 months. He and Harris are desperate to gain the Muslim and the Arab vote in the United States. And the Israelis understand this very, very well, and they're practically taking them hostage at this moment.
The suggestion also is that Iran may have been talked out of carrying out a retaliatory strike against Israel after the assassination of the Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. A pause potentially while these talks are ongoing, at least. What evidence do we have, though, that that is the case for Iran? And does that also apply to Hezbollah attacks on northern Israel?
Well, we don't have any evidence because, as you know, these talks are done behind closed doors and no one really has a real insight in what's being talked about. But I suspect part of the bridging is to allow greater time before Iran reacts. So this kind of bridging probably included Iran because there are three main factors that have changed over the last few weeks. As far as Israel is concerned. The first is this Iranian threat of retaliation. And they know now from experience that Iran will retaliate. They did retaliate in the past, although it was more measured. We don't know how they will retaliate this time, but we know that they are capable and will retaliate. The second is the greater threat that the hostages are coming under as a result of Hamas potentially losing control over its individuals who are guarding these hostages. We saw last week one of the guards killing one of the captives because his family was massacred by the Israelis. So he just could not psychologically keep looking after a person and feeding him while his own family being massacred by the Israelis. And the third, which is quite important, I think, is the general mood internationally towards Israel. That United Nations Security Council meeting where Erdogan, the Israeli ambassador, lashed out at the international community, at the Security Council, spoke in such a degree of arrogance about Israel being the most moral country in the world, about the fact that everyone has got them wrong, they are the only right. The way Britain reacted in particular was quite important. This is for the first time Britain takes a clear position and calls or used the words of war crimes when addressing Israel. So there is a general change in mood towards Israel,
Okay.
obviously outside the Congress in the United States, but it is important. And all these factors must play on the mind of the Israelis as they engage in talks.
Sultan BARAKAT, always good to hear your thoughts and analysis. Thank you.
Thank you.